Why Beyond Meat collapsed. Imagine a company once seen as the future of the food industry. In 2019, its valuation soared past 14 billion US dollars. Investors flocked in, convinced this company was about to change the way the world ate meat forever. Then in just a few years, it all fell apart. Its valuation crashed down to around 330 million US dollars, wiping out more than $13 billion in market value. This is the story of Beyond Meat. And in this video, we're breaking down, one by one, the early strategic mistakes that, while they seemed small at the time, snowballed into a decline this company was never able to stop. Beyond Meat's first real problem actually started with something very basic. Who exactly was their target customer? Plant-based meat, broadly speaking, appeals to people for two main reasons: environmental benefits and health benefits. These are the two strongest reasons people are willing to try a product like this in the first place. But this is exactly where Beyond Meat failed to build a clear brand identity. Instead of aggressively targeting the largest and most promising consumer group, health-conscious flexitarians, people who still eat meat but want to cut back, Beyond Meat focused too heavily on the vegan and vegetarian market. The problem is, the vegan and vegetarian market in the United States is quite small, only about 4% of the total population. By focusing too narrowly on this segment, Beyond Meat effectively ignored a much larger market. Millions of consumers who genuinely wanted to eat healthier and more sustainably, but who didn't identify as vegan or vegetarian. The result was widespread confusion. Who was this product actually for? Longtime vegans who'd avoided meat for years? Or meat eaters looking to try something different? This lack of clear positioning became the first crack in Beyond Meat's business foundation, a crack that would only widen over time. For a while, Beyond Meat looked like it might solve this problem through a very promising strategy: partnerships with massive fast food chains. McDonald's, KFC, and Taco Bell all struck deals with Beyond Meat at various points. News of these partnerships got investors genuinely excited. Beyond Meat's stock jumped every time a new partnership was announced. On paper, this looked like major validation. If giants like McDonald's were willing to put this product on their menu, surely it had a big future ahead, right? Unfortunately, reality on the ground was far more complicated. Mainstream fast food customers showed only limited demand for these plant-based menu items. This wasn't a customer segment actively seeking out meat alternatives. They were coming to fast food for something quick, familiar, and cheap. Meanwhile, the restaurants themselves faced real operational challenges: higher ingredient costs, slower preparation times due to the product behaving differently from regular meat, and various other operational hurdles that made these items difficult to integrate smoothly into what's normally a highly efficient fast food kitchen system. Put simply, this large-scale expansion happened too soon, before consumer adoption was strong enough to actually support it. Beyond Meat expanded its reach before market demand was truly ready to absorb it. This brings us to the next structural problem, and one that's far harder to solve: production cost. Making plant-based meat that tastes, feels, and even bleeds like real meat requires complex ingredients and highly specialized food technology. This isn't just mixing together some plant-based ingredients. It's a high-level food engineering process that requires expensive research and materials. As a result, Beyond Meat's production costs were significantly higher than conventional beef. And without sufficient production scale, Beyond Meat had no way to bring these costs down to a more competitive level. This created a classic vicious cycle. Because production costs were high, Beyond Meat was forced to sell its products at a premium price. But that premium price limited broader consumer adoption. People who were curious enough to try the product hesitated because it cost so much more than the regular meat they already knew. In other words, Beyond Meat was stuck in a situation where it needed massive scale to bring costs down, but needed lower prices to reach that massive scale in the first place. A vicious cycle that was extremely difficult to break. If the pricing problem wasn't heavy enough already, Beyond Meat faced another painful blow. The credibility of its health claims started to crumble. Consumers, increasingly critical and accustomed to reading ingredient labels closely, began digging deeper into Beyond Meat's ingredient list. And what they found was surprising: high sodium content, along with a significant amount of canola oil. These findings directly contradicted the healthy image Beyond Meat had spent years building. How could a product marketed as a healthy alternative contain high sodium levels? Exactly the kind of thing many health-conscious people were trying to avoid. On top of that, there were reports of cross-contamination during production. Reports like these further damaged consumer trust, not just in product quality, but in food safety itself. And in the food industry, trust is everything. Once it cracks, it's incredibly hard to rebuild. Now let's put all of these problems together. Health benefits became less and less convincing due to increasingly questioned claims. Environmental benefits alone weren't strong enough to justify a price that was so much higher than regular meat. With both of these core pillars weakened, Beyond Meat struggled to differentiate itself, both from conventional meat and from the other plant-based alternatives beginning to appear in the market. Making things worse, improving the recipe and nutritional profile of the product required a significant investment in research and development. But a company that wasn't profitable simply didn't have the funds to make that kind of investment. Beyond Meat knew what needed fixing. It just didn't have the resources to actually fix it. This brings us to the core issue underlying almost every other problem. Beyond Meat never achieved sustainable profitability. Weak sales meant limited cash flow, and limited cash flow meant Beyond Meat didn't have enough funds to improve the taste of its products, reduce production costs, or invest in developing better products. This created a vicious cycle that became increasingly hard to break. Without product improvements, it became harder to attract new customers. And without new customers, it became harder to generate the revenue needed to fund those improvements in the first place. Beyond Meat was trapped in a cycle that kept feeding on itself. And in the middle of all these structural problems, there was one issue that hit consumers most directly and immediately: taste. Many reviewers and consumers criticized the taste and texture of Beyond Meat's products, with some openly calling them unpleasant. This is an extremely fundamental problem, because at the end of the day, no matter how compelling a food product's story is, taste remains the deciding factor in whether a consumer comes back to buy it again. The combination of a high price, questionable health claims, and a taste that often failed to impress created a dangerous pattern. Many consumers tried the product once out of curiosity or because of the hype, but then never bought it again. In the food business, trial without repeat purchase is one of the most alarming signals a company can face. Now let's look at the full picture: a price that was too high, a health perception increasingly under question, disappointing taste, expansion that happened too early before market demand had truly matured, and ongoing financial losses that never let up. None of these factors existed in isolation. They reinforced each other, creating a self-perpetuating cycle that kept getting worse. High prices limited adoption, limited production scale, small production scale kept costs high, high costs forced prices to stay high, and without enough revenue, there was no money to fix the taste or the formula, which in turn made consumers even less willing to come back. This is what's known as a self-reinforcing downward spiral, a cycle of problems that, once it starts spinning, becomes harder and harder to stop over time. And ultimately, this spiral is what drove Beyond Meat's dramatic collapse, from a company worth more than $14 billion down to just around $330 million. So what's the big lesson from Beyond Meat's collapse? An innovative product with a big vision for the future can't rely on that vision alone. Beyond Meat's vision was genuinely relevant, reducing meat consumption for the sake of health and the environment. But that big vision wasn't matched by the right execution at every level. Clear positioning, competitive pricing, defensible claims, and most importantly, a taste that actually satisfied consumers. The small mistakes early on, an unclear target audience, expanding too soon, uncontrolled production costs, might have looked fixable one at a time. But without enough profitability to fund those fixes, all these problems piled up and reinforced each other, until they became too large to overcome. So what's the big lesson from Beyond Meat's collapse? An innovative product with a big vision for the future can't rely on that vision alone. Beyond Meat's vision was genuinely relevant, reducing meat consumption for the sake of health and the environment. But that big vision wasn't matched by the right execution at every level. Clear positioning, competitive pricing, defensible claims, and most importantly, a taste that actually satisfied consumers. The small mistakes early on, an unclear target audience, expanding too soon, uncontrolled production costs, might have looked fixable one at a time. But without enough profitability to fund those fixes, all these problems piled up and reinforced each other until they became too large to overcome. The core lesson: a big idea still requires disciplined execution at every detail. From knowing exactly who your target customer is, to timing your expansion correctly, to maintaining the credibility of your product claims in front of increasingly skeptical consumers. If any one of these foundations wobbles from the start and isn't fixed in time, the entire business can collapse, no matter how big the vision behind it was. If you enjoy business case studies like this, don't forget to like and subscribe so you don't miss other case studies on global business successes and failures. See you in the next video.